Hello and welcome to another Game Maker tutorial. Today we are going to take a look at movements and collisions. Right now we have something pretty decent right in here, but I'm going to show you exactly what I mean with movement, because right here we're jumping to a position, and that basically means we're doing everything ourselves. We're just saying, oh, jump to that position. But that's going to create problems later on when we want to have obstacles and such, because we just go right in the obstacle. And instead I'm going to show you how to let the game handle most of the movement stuff, and I'm also going to show you how to handle collisions so that something happens when two objects collide. Just for now we're going to change this code right in here. We're going to change it just a little bit, and we are going to make sure that you can only move aligned to a grid. So right now we're going to remove everything over here except the left key, and we're going to do stuff there. So right over here we are going to say, right over here, this is to check whether we're aligned to a grid, so let's put that at 32 because that's the size of our sprite. If it's aligned to that, then we can move. And when we move, we don't say, oh, we jump to a position, we will actually move. So what we'll do is we'll set our speed right over here to say 4. And that means with move fix we can select up to 8 directions, or the middle one, 9th direction, but that basically selects a random direction, and we can just select one and it'll start to move in that direction. It's pretty easy to get used to. If you want more specific directions you can use this one, and you can enter a number of degrees here. But for now this will do. We will start moving in a direction if we're aligned with the grid and when left is pressed. And now we can see that we start moving left. But that's not quite what we want, because we just keep on moving and moving. So right now we're going to test at the beginning of every step, I think that's right, whether we're aligned, and if we are, we set our speed to 0 again. So here we go, 32, 32. If we're aligned, we are going to stop moving. There we go. Let's see whether that works or not. It should work. Yes, there we go. We're moving 32 pixels at a time, so that way we can easily integrate grid movement without having to test whether we're aligned every step, because well, we do it here sort of, but it's really difficult to check which direction it's moving and everything to make sure that this all works without using the movement here. So let's take a look at more of these functions right over here. We can set the direction with this, we can set it with this. We can also set the horizontal speed and the vertical speed separately, which is great if you're making platformers. So basically you can use this for gravity, and you can use the horizontal one for just running around. You can also set gravity and friction. We're not going to do that now, but those are also functions that are pretty useful. Gravity basically does what it says. It applies gravity to the object, and friction makes sure it slowly slows down over time until it stops. And right over here, this means you reverse the direction, which is pretty cool to implement bouncing. So there we go, that's that. Now we're going to copy this a whole bunch of times. You already know how that works. To the right. This is pretty easy, because right now we don't really even have to change our values. We can just click on an arrow and we're done. Duplicate event and down, and right over here, down. Cool. So let's see if it works. It does work. Wonderful. Okay, so now we've done that, we can start to check for collisions, because we've now implemented a basic movement system. You can basically do a lot of stuff with this, but this is very basic. And we can now go and check for collisions. Let's use this one to collide with, and this one to check for the collision. The reason for that being that if we want this to provide score or something, we'll remove the score stuff. If we want to add score and we want this to give score, we want multiple of those, and if it constantly checks multiple times instead of just once for the player object, that can slow our game down. A little bit of optimization there. So let's see the collision event, and right here we can select object 1, as it's still called, to collide with. So now whenever a collision is detected with object 1, something happens, and now we are going to find out what happens there, and we're of course going to add score right here. Points, set it to 1 relative when it collides, and now we're going to do something fun. We're going to destroy the other instance. Right over here, we're going to destroy it. And we'll click on Other, and that means that whichever instance it collides with, that is this object, it gets destroyed. So let's test that. Let's put a few of these in the room, a few of these yellow stuff things, right over here, right over here, right over here. That'll do. Let's see. There we go. Our score increased. Let's get it on the screen. Wonderful. Our score increases as it is supposed to. So that's how collision works. You check for an object right here with a collision, within the collision event, and then in that object you can do things to the checking object, and you can do things to the other object also. That's quite wonderful, because that means you don't have to do it twice. You don't have to have the event in the other object also if you want to do stuff to it. This is pretty awesome, and that's one of the reasons I'm glad why we have the possibility to do things with other objects as well. So just for now, we are going to check out a few more movement options. We're not going to use them actually, but we're going to just check them out. Let's see, where are they? Right over here somewhere. Oh, they're all in here. Okay. So we've tested jump before, because it just says, oh, we're going to jump to that position. And right over here is something else. It's quite similar. Move towards position. That is basically the same, except that it applies a speed to the object. So if you want to go somewhere in a direction, but you don't actually know what the direction is, you only know the goal, you can enter the coordinates of the goal and you can set the speed, and it'll move there in that direction. That's really great. Something else we haven't checked out is this one. This is jump to start. That means the instance is placed at the start position. So wherever it was in the room when it was created, it's put back there when you call this. Then there's this, jump to a random position. You can make it snap. So basically, whenever we hit this is a really fun one actually. Let's just try it out. Let's see how this works. Because right now we're not destroying these things, we're putting them somewhere else. Right over there. See? That's pretty cool also, isn't it? Let's leave it at that for now. Let's take a look at these other options. Right here is align to grid. So it's basically the same we're checking for, except here we're doing it. So if its position is not divisible by 16, it makes it divisible by 16 by rounding to the nearest whole number. Right here, this is wrapping. This is a little bit tricksy. Sometimes it doesn't quite work how you expect it to, but what this basically does is you're wrapping the screen. So if an object leaves the right side of the screen, it enters the left side. That's the main goal of this. It also has to do with movement, so that's why it's in here. Then there's move to contact. So basically, if you know there's an object in a direction, you can say move towards that object but stop when you touch it. So that's useful for walls and such. If you don't want to touch the wall, you just move until you touch it, so you don't actually enter into the wall. Really useful. We also have bounce. That means that whenever you hit an object, whether it's solid or not solid, which you can check here, and whether you want to rebound at a 90-degree angle or want to rebound precisely with how the pixels are aligned, that's how that works. You can set it there. You may have noticed that in there was an option for solid. Solid is basically a flag you can set for the object when you're using these functions. Other than that, it's not really used for much. So you can just set walls to solid and enemies to not solid, for example. Then there are paths. These things are a little bit, well, let's say on the advanced side, so we're not going to dive into those right now, but you can basically make objects travel predetermined paths here. And then there are these last options. These are pretty interesting. These are going to pathfind towards an object, but this one is going to stop whenever it hits an object, a solid object or any object. And this one right here is doing the same thing, but it's going to pathfind around objects. So it's never going to collide with an object, it's trying to move around it. It's a very easy way of implementing movement for enemies, for example. They're just trying to go to the player, and you're using this every step. You have to use it every step, by the way, to make sure they're traveling towards the player the best they can, avoiding all obstacles you want them to avoid. And that's basically how movement works in GameMaker. Right now we just have very little code, which would have been a lot more if we had done it ourselves, but GameMaker is very advanced in how it handles movement, so that's really cool. And you may have already noticed in which kind of direction we're moving with the game we're gonna make, and indeed it is a Pac-Man clone. But don't worry, by the time this tutorial is done, you'll be able to make a lot more than that. This tutorial series even. But for now, that's it. We are going to end off the video here, and we are going to wait till next time with the follow-up tutorial, which has to do with drawing. Because, face it, just this circle isn't really appetizing, and right now it's a little bit weird to just put a mouth on it because it won't even point in the right direction. But we are going to tackle that next time, so please tune in next week, where we are going to explore how to draw things on the screen in any way you want. Goodbye.